What's up, guys? I've been in a little bit of a morbid place lately, and as such, I've been looking at some true crime stuff. Uh, Not nitty gritty like small cases, but the big ones. So, Idaho 4 has been something kind of off and on my radar a couple years ago when it actually happened. I was in no state to begin to cover it. I did look up Bryan Kohberger, and that's whose chart we are looking at present. And I was like, oh, yeah, I see it. Duh. But did I want to do that publicly? No. I'm really not one who wants to draw more attention to something negative while it's still negative. I want it to get to a more neutral place because it's easier to talk about. And this, what I want to do is energy for understanding rather than here's the smoking gun, because there isn't one. Um, I didn't use his name, Bryan Kohberger. I assure you, this is his birth date, and I don't believe we have a birth time for him. But I want to articulate, I don't know how many people are born on a given day, but a lot, right? So there are plenty of people who were born November 21st, 1994, who did not become serial killer wannabes. They are just on Earth and they are living their lives and they are private citizens. And so you can't look at November 21st, 1994 and be like, serial killer, wannabe. That's right. In order to have something bad happen with this energy, you have to have, first of all, the latent potential, which is this chart that we're looking at. And then you have to have a number of things go wrong with the latent potential in order to get to a place where it's like, let's have gruesome fixations, let's plan to murder innocent people. So, like, there are so many other things that you can do with this energy, and the people who are not Bryan Kohberger, who are born on this day, are out there doing that. So, I don't know if this is my new soapbox. It kind of feels like it is for right now. But there are so many other things that you can do with this energy, but it is an intense energy. And so let's just break it down a little bit. As you can see, and this is like, your eye immediately goes to this. And like I said, we don't have a birth time, so you kind of have to ignore all these little houses because, like, do I think he's Aquarius rising? No, I don't. Honestly. That but your eye immediately goes to this whole situation. So, like, Bryan Kohberger, very obviously, if you notice nothing else about him, it's that he is a proud owner of a Scorpio Death Stare. There are Scorpio sons who I know and love who do not have the Scorpio Death Stare, but if you know it, you know it. It's also possible to not be a Scorpio sun and have the Scorpio Death Stare. It's the intense eye contact, where it looks like they're trying to look through whatever it is they're looking at. Bryan Kohberger has that. He is not only a Scorpio sun, he is a Scorpio sun conjunct Pluto, which is the ruler of Scorpio. So you take Scorpio sun and then you take conjunct Pluto and you multiply 100. And then you take the fact that he has Jupiter in Scorpio and then you multiply that by 100. And that is the eye contact situation that he's got going on. By the way, I'm gesticulating wildly while I say this. Like, there are just a couple of signs that have their tells, and the Scorpio Death Stare, like, as secretive and private and hidden as Scorpio likes to be, the damn Death Stare gives them away immediately. Where it's like, why are you trying to see, like, my spinal cord from the front of my body? Like, you don't have X-ray vision, cut it out. That is often how I think when I see a Scorpio duster, because I know what I'm looking at. The other things that would confer a Scorpio duster, Pluto on the ascendant for sure. I see that all the time. So regardless of sign, Pluto on the ascendant. Scorpio rising will also do that by itself, especially the generation that have Pluto in Scorpio. But sometimes just Scorpio rising, and then very occasionally Pluto in a different uh, aspect to the ascendant than a conjunction. So the trine would do it, but I think that with the trine, like you can turn it off and turn it on. If you have this compounding situation, you have a duster. So while not all people on November 21st, 1994, became wannabe serial killers, they have a duster. If you don't, contact me. We'll do a Zoom call and I'll show you your duster. Uh, okay, so the other thing that I want to talk about, well, there are several, but now I want you to notice what we have a lot of. So the word astrologers like to use is preponderance. So count the preponderance of water planets. Ready? One, two, three, four, not a planet, five, six, seven. That's too many. And again, I'm sorry if this is your birthday. Um, seven water planets is so much, and so to uh, hmm, I don't know how to articulate it. If you have a lot of water, that's a very emotional way of being. It's you can handle a lot of feelings, a lot of pain, a lot of emotions, but if you don't have productive outlets for the emotions, it's just like there's an intense focus in areas of life because there need to be those areas of focus. And I say this because now I would like for us to together count the number of fixed planets there are. One, two, three, four, not a planet, five, six. So six fixed, seven water. Fixed energy is very good at sustaining things. And so if energy like this has habits, those are very, 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 very difficult to break. And because the energy is water energy, you have to give it something that basically it finds more interesting in order to get the situation to shift. So if you have bad habits, you have to replace them with something that you basically care about more. Like, um, I don't know. I'm maybe like I am overly reductive. I realize that, but it is what it is. Okay, now I would like to just call attention to the fact that Venus is retrograde. And so the ability to relate to others is it basically runs backward and goes internal before it goes external. This doesn't mean that if you have Venus retrograde or Venus retrograde in Scorpio, that you're screwed and you can never relate to people. But what it does mean is basically you have to relate to yourself before you can relate to others. Think about what things mean to you. So then, rather than just being able to lightly have a conversation and go out and socialize, like you can become jealous because it just seems easier for other people to do basic stuff and like talk to people, have a lot of friends, because you don't realize if you don't know astrology and you don't understand your wiring that you have to go in before out. And I have a number of friends who have Venus retrograde. I like them a lot. They tend to be very blunt and tell you like exactly how they feel or exactly how they would approach something. But Venus in Scorpio is going to be a lot more secretive and a lot more possessive. So another thing with Plutonians, like this amount of Scorpio compounded by this, and then with this, it's like once you have, God forbid, some fixations or attachments to things or people, uh, you don't let go. It's the easiest way of saying it. And it does, so if you look at these numbers, also I need to point out, so like 29, 28, and 26 are all next to each other. 2 is far away from the late 20s, and then 16 and 13 are together. It looks like they're all together, but that's because it's very hard to like fit things into a circle uh and have it look appropriate. Otherwise these numbers and figures would be inscrutable in the chart. So really, like this Sun, Pluto, Jupiter is one chunk. Venus is over here by itself, and then Mercury and the node are also by themselves. Like you can argue, because Jupiter has a reaching um, quality about it, that Jupiter would expand and touch more things in the chart. So like you could say, and I could get there, that like this would be felt faintly. The connection between Mercury and Jupiter, but honestly, Mercury and the North Node have an expansive quality that's very similar to Jupiter, so it'd be hard to tell. Okay, but here's the other thing, is that all of this this one chunk of the Sun, Pluto, Jupiter is squared by Mars and Leo, and Mars and Leo is the only uh, planet that's in a fire sign in this chart. So uh, when you have the only of something, and you have a shit ton of water, it is gonna want to act out and show itself, and basically it's like being on a seesaw. Uh, I'm trying to like that. Maybe that's a bad analogy because there's different modes and different elements, but if you were on a seesaw and you have this singleton in an element, it does take on more weight than it normally would. So this is a Mars that like wants to demonstrate its Mars qualities. So that can translate to hypermasculinity, especially in fire, just like yelling about man related things. But in this particular case, it's very evident that violence uh, took over. But there are other ways to express Mars and Leo that are far more healthy, and that I would argue you should do. So like Mars and Leo definitely has a performative quality. It likes to show off. So if this was an energy pattern that had good habits, being like hyper physically active would, and like committed to something like running, uh, or a similar endurance sport, would be very useful. Like doing stuff that you're super committed to. Scorpio can be used to benefit others and connect with other people and do really intensive work. So, like social work, especially with the fact that Saturn is over here in Pisces, like, and all of the Scorpio can be used to like handle depth situations and truly understand what's going on with other people, and again being really committed to helping. And I haven't talked about this very much yet, the fact that he has Neptune and Uranus in conjunction in Capricorn, but that would also give the potential to have like visions for doing things a very different way in terms of the social order. And so it doesn't exactly sextile the Sun and Pluto, but it does sextile Jupiter. So it does get tied into the energetic story here, and so it is connected, even though these are at a lower number of Capricorn. What's missing, and this is really important to point out, because I've spent some time with this content over the past couple of weeks. It seems as though Bryan Kohberger is a person who thinks he's very smart. What's missing in this chart? Air. There isn't any. And so I am not saying that if you don't have air, you can't be smart. I'm not saying that at all. Although I am an Aquarius, so it probably sounds like I am saying that. But what the lack of air and only a little bit of fire and this earth, I guess I should just say now, this earth is not useful. So, like, again, no offense to people who actually have this energy, but I believe that Neptune in Capricorn doesn't do anything for you. And Uranus in Capricorn is a transpersonal planet. So, yes, this chart technically has Earth, but this is like the least grounded combination of Earth I can think of. So this isn't going to help you land the plane, so to speak. But there is no air in this chart, and there is very little Earth. And so it's not as connected to um, many ideas as it is connected to few ideas. So this is the type of person, or sorry, this is the type of energy that could think that they understand how the world works and how things work. But if you, a point that was made that I thought was a valid one is this person, when he was considering how to act after the fact, like turning his phone on, turning his phone off, visiting the scene or not, like he didn't fully know how law enforcement worked or how law enforcement would investigate, or like, you know, he knew what he knew about crime because he was studying it, but he didn't know what he didn't know, and he didn't circulate, he didn't consider other ideas. He had the idea of how things would go. And so this like Mercury conjunct the North Node has like that's gonna embolden Mercury, and so it's definitely the potential for a smarter Mercury. But without air, the ability to circulate, take in new ideas, take in foreign ideas, change course, be flexible, is fundamentally missing from this chart. Okay. And then with a Taurus South Node, again, the ability to pivot, because the South Node is basically like it's the software system that you have installed and running when you get here. To use a very nerdy analogy, it's what you're running. And so, like, I'm jealous to have all of this Scorpio energy, and including a planet on the North Node. I would kill for that shit. My software sucks. It's very useful for things like this, but like I have issues. Like I want stuff on the North Node, damn it. Um, but this is not an energy that pivots well, and this is not an energy setup that takes in foreign information and considers it. This is an energy that once it has decided what it's doing, then it does it, and once it forms habits, it does them. And so without air, like if you are born around this time and you want some advice, uh, meet some Geminis. Like make friends with them, or some Libras. Libra and Scorpio are probably going to get along better. But like you need the input of somebody with the capacity for taking in new information and challenging your viewpoints and opinions so strongly that you will consider them. Okay. Just another point that I really can't elaborate on. So like, and it'll become obvious why. Liz Green does a a number of things. I believe that there's more than one book that she has about psychopathy and the horoscope, and she focuses on the moon. So, boy, was I surprised when I looked at this chart and saw that Bryan Kohberger has a Cancer moon. Huh, you know? But what we don't know, because the moon aspects change basically every half an hour because the moon moves so fast and we don't have a birth time for this guy. We don't know whether the moon is making any aspects. So right now with the noon birth time there's a trine to Saturn and a trine to Venus. So like it's a water grand trine right now, which is at noon. I have no idea what time this guy was born. So you cannot say that the moon is doing such and such, ergo such and such, right? But if there was a water grand trine, just to speculate, that would create a closed circuit of emotion. And closed circuits can make you very good at specific things, but closed circuits are inherently closed. Like, you want difficult aspects like squares and like oppositions, which this chart has a square to Mars, right? And but doesn't have oppositions that we know about. So the farthest the moon can go 6 degrees forward or backward if you do a noon chart, which is why I do noon charts. So that would get, if you squint, a very loose opposition to Neptune, or if you take it back to zero, Cancer, nothing. So having energy that would oppose any of his energy, like that would also be useful to disrupt a closed circuit or to disrupt a whole lot of fixed energy and to get some air in there, because oppositions, have the tendency to be air like in their nature. So again, there's like thousands of people out there with this energy who are not wannabe serial killers, but the conjunction of Mercury and the node would might rather give you the impression that you're very smart and and you can get away with it and you are a mastermind. But there are blind spots that I've just discussed. You don't know what you don't know. And then with the Taurus south node of like thinking that you understand how the world works, the problem with Taurus south node people is that if there are limits that they're not aware of, they just kind of shake their head and keep going. They also have a tendency to be very defensive and protective. And Jan Spiller talks about, at some point, she says that it's like they're basically like wearing all the clothes they own, as because it's like comfort and familiarity and protection. And so to move to the Scorpio node is like going out into the unknown and being challenged by other people and really connecting with people one to one. So with a Taurus south node and then having the south node ruler be retrograde in Scorpio, the need to deeply connect with other people, but not necessarily the ability to know how to do it because the energy is so opposite of the software that you're running, essentially. Okay, now I'm going to get more morbid. If this is not your bag, I apologize. But I do need to say before I do that that I need to call your attention to it because I'm about to talk about it. So I talked about the fact that the Leo Mars is squaring the Scorpio everything, but the Leo Mars is also in conjuncting the Capricorn, uh, Neptune, and Uranus. And here's one of my biases. Mars in aspect to um, Neptune and to Uranus without other productive energies to ground it and land it, it can be very dangerous, or very messed up. So, what is happening here is Mars is the only planet that's in fire. So that's going to make it heavier and going to make it get stuck places with like ways that it wants to express itself. And then its square to Jupiter is going to embolden it, and its square to um, Pluto is going to make it incredibly intense, and its square to the Sun is going to make it argumentative. I could do a whole video on Mars square the Sun, but that's another thing for another day. And then the inconjunct to um, Neptune and Uranus, now it's dangerous. It's just straight up dangerous. So if you have this energy, you need Mars doing something very extreme that's beneficial and healthy and not fixated on negative stuff, and you probably are already acutely aware of that. um because if it is given free reign to do whatever, it can do what it did. Okay, here's a morbid part. And by the way, um having earth energy, having Saturn involved, can ground it, land it, make it more healthy, or having people in your life who are much more grounding would be necessary. I think, like, probably one of the biggest issues is how isolated this person seems to have made himself over time. And so, like, maintaining those connections, which is what the Scorpio North Node is all about, and all of the Scorpio energy, would give it a more healthy expression to work on behalf of other things. This Mars clearly stopped working on behalf of other things if it ever indeed started. Okay, now I'm going to put the time up for the time that he committed the murders, which he said that he did. Okay. And so, first of all, gross. Second of all, well, I guess I'll tell you why I think it's gross. But this, yikes. Let me explain. So, the first thing that I want to show you is the fact that transiting Neptune started here when he was born. And again, we don't have a birth time, so you have to just like squint and pretend all these lines aren't here. Now Neptune is sextiling itself, which means that it's forming a yod to Mars. And Jupiter had joined the chat and basically made this more. So, like, Jupiter is like cheering on Neptune. Okay. And Pluto had finished conjuncting Uranus, but it would have conjuncted Neptune and conjuncted Uranus in the previous couple of years, which would have given this transpersonal energy some ideas. If we had a full chart and a meaning of birth time, I'm pretty sure I would be able to explain to you even more what happened, because I'd have the culprits in the houses, but I don't have that information. So it would make more sense if I had this information, but I have more than enough to paint you a picture. Okay, so it's like, it's important to point out what Pluto just did and then what Pluto was currently doing. So, like I said, this Capricorn stuff is connected to this Sun, Pluto, Jupiter stuff. And Pluto is sextiling Jupiter at this point. So that's like a huge cheerleader. It gave this ideas, and now it's cheering this on. And if you had this natal energy, I bet you so much that you were making some life changes in 2022, and you felt really empowered about them, because, like, for you, as Pluto was in Capricorn, like, that would have been really useful and productive energy. Might have taken you to a dark place for a while as you began to make a lot of internal changes, which you would have been doing. Maybe not a lot of other people knew about them, but you were getting trines from the Pisces energy here, and then sextiles from Pluto, and the conjunction here to the Capricorn stuff would have been pretty interesting. But that's just a shit ton of transformative energy, and if you use it productively, you make great life changes. But if you're somebody who was stuck in some bad ideas, then it just gets exacerbated. And then, of course, Pluto would have inconjuncted Mars, so presented some, like, excuse me, Mars wanted to do stuff, like, had some ideas, and Pluto was like, the inconjunct means you need to fucking change, but what what Pluto does is it's like uh it presents a dull note. So Mars thinks that it is going to do something, and Pluto's like, ha ha ha, no, and also never. Like that, Pluto gives you the impression of, oh, that's never going to happen. And by the way, you have to change several things about yourself if you want it to happen. And so, Pluto's emboldening this energy. There's one active yod here to like with the 2022 energy to Mars, which already has some bad ideas and is going down a bad path, right? There's another yod that I saw yesterday that I'm trying to find again. Where is it? Yes. Okay. So then this is his chart energy, right? So this is a sextile between Jupiter and Uranus, and then it ropes in Neptune. Well, now we have Mars retrograde in the sky, which is Mars energy that's both concentrated and messed up in the way that it's expressing. So that this Mars is forming a yod, and this so there's two yods active in his chart that involve Mars and the expression of weird Mars energy. Okay? I don't know what happened to the rest of you with this energy at birth, but I I already talked about Mars Neptune without Saturn, but this Mars energy is squaring sky Neptune, and that was a really weird time for me personally. I don't have all of this stuff, but it was like that Mars was in Gemini. I was talking nonstop. Um, just, I mean, this was in my Mars was in my third house, but like it just out of nowhere, all of this like stuff from the past and all of this talking and but that was me. That's a benign use of like this is way too much and way too weird. But way too much and way too weird is like that would be the epitome of this energy, and unfortunately this guy expressed it poorly. Another thing that's very important to note, and this is something that I don't understand and one of the mysteries of the universe, he had a nodal reversal. So your south node energy seems like it's a good idea because the north node's on the south node, and it's important to note that this Uranus would have conjuncted his south node, which pulls you back into south node behaviors or like your original software system running and giving you some ideas that would pull you back into the past and away from where you're supposed to go. So this would be even more isolating, and I looked at the retrograde pattern. It wasn't immediate, but it was within the last year or so that he would have experienced that. So this is like energy that's very stuck in its ways. Not good. And then something that, so like another thing about having active yods is that things do not go according to plan. Yods are aspects of continual adjustment. They have a Neptune quality about them. So somebody with this much fixed energy, this much Scorpio energy, and like this is evident about Bryan Kohberger, very big on control. Well, when you have active yods, you know what you don't have, especially when they involve Neptune? Control. So yods have a Neptune quality whether or not they have Neptune in them. But he had two yods involving Neptune and like not didn't have control. Thought he didn't. So now let's think a little bit into the future. Saturn, and this is super nerdy, and I only caught it this morning when I was putting out the like mapping this exactly. But Saturn and the Sun are squaring, which means that Saturn is stationed direct, which means that within a couple of months, Saturn would be opposing this Mars, which I don't want to give murderers advice, but if you have Saturn coming for your Mars in any harsh aspect, you can expect that if you're doing dumb shit, you're gonna get caught, or you're gonna get stalled, or you're gonna get slowed down. Period. The end. So that was a thing that was coming. And then now ish, remember, as I knew this today, Uranus is back in Taurus. It was in Gemini for a little bit. But guess who pleaded guilty when Uranus was opposing his sun? Just guess. And it took that long, but we got there. So I hope that I've painted a picture. And I suppose that we could do the fact that he had Chiron in Virgo, which is like a sense of woundedness about being detail oriented, which would make you hyper detail oriented, and then it being opposed by Neptune and um, Jupiter, you in Pisces with a super undermining quality. I guess we could do that, right? I I guess we could add that to the mix of everything. Why not? Uh, but that this is how not to be a murderer. Do anything else with this energy. Help other people learn to connect with other people, even though with Venus retrograde, it makes it that much more difficult because when you have your South Node ruler in the North Node sign, that means that, like, often, and I'm taking my mentor's words, but it's like the family that you're born into or the people that you're raised around are very different from you. So you just feel like the ugly duckling, essentially, where it's like, I don't fit in with these people. But you're still like programmed by them, even though you're different. So it's like getting to a place in life where um, you are comfortable with yourself despite being very different from how you were raised. So this kind of, again, I'm just sharing information, and it's morbid and dark and gross and hard to look at, but that's that's where I am right now. And I did look at the victims. I was gonna pull up their charts and show you something in terms of the female victims, but I'll just tell you and you can look if you want. Um, all of the female victims have a bunch of energy in Gemini, which is where this Mars retrograde was. And it's where this Neptune Jupiter was squaring. And in fact, all of the female victims have specifically Mercury in Gemini and then some other energy. And I was flummoxed by that. I don't like, and then actually, Ethan Chapin, his family posted the time that he was born, and like there's nothing in these charts that it's like you're gonna get murdered, but we have Ethan Chapin's actual birth time, so you can get his full chart, and he just had like Neptune and Jupiter in the 12th house, and Mars was doing something, and Pluto was doing something, and I was like, well, then why didn't I get murdered? Like it's not these nothing about the victims charts. Like you can see it if you squint, but there's nothing that's like slam dunk. And just like you like something awful will happen to you. And we don't have the full charts of any of the female victims, but we do have Ethan Chapin's. It's disturbing. This energy in 2022 was disturbing. And yeah, but it's like it's not slam dunk. It's just a collection of like the wrong place at the wrong time, and the fact that all of the women had Mercury in Gemini, being squared by this Neptune in Pisces, like that's a very that has a very disturbing quality because Mercury is how you perceive reality. And so Neptune in Pisces is undermining that. So you can feel unsafe when you're safe and safe when you're unsafe. And then Mars hits that. And that's not the long and short of it. But Jupiter with Neptune didn't do anything good in that regard, right? And then an inconjunct from Pluto to that Gemini energy wouldn't have done anything good. But these were people who were just living their lives and had no reason to suspect that they were in danger. But isn't it bonkers that they all had like, and it's not like, oh, just Mercury and Gemini. They all had multiple planets in Gemini that were pretty much all in the same space. And it's because two of them were born at a very similar time. And then the third was kind of a coincidence. And with the two that were born at the same time, for one, Mercury was retrograde, and for the other, it wasn't. You can go look, or you can contact me directly, and I'll show you. But like, I don't want to do it publicly, so I just want to tell you about it. Like, I, you know, I'm. It's much later, and so I'm having a delayed reaction. But it's like, it just sucks. So I don't want to be like, oh, like this is how you get murdered, or this is how you don't. But again, earth energy of to counteract the fact that they had this air that was being squared by Neptune and Pisces and Jupiter and Pisces. Somebody to be like, hey, lock your doors and you take precautions, right? They wouldn't have been thinking that way, because the Neptune and Jupiter influence wouldn't have let them think that way. You just feel like a sitting duck when you have that type of an exchange. So and like just powerless to do anything about it, because Neptune in Pisces, which is ending, is such an undermining energy. So that is what I want to do with this. But I hope that I have given you the impression that you can do whatever you want with your energy, but there are ways to mitigate it so you're not just locked into compulsive stuff that doesn't go anywhere good. Like this, any of us can do whatever we want with our energy, but if you have this level of intensity and you're headed down a bad path and you know it, and I mean the danger is like you might not know it because you can get so isolated with your isolation programming here. And then I mean Scorpio is similarly isolating when it's not being used in a good form. You need air. You need someone to shake you out of it. You need an opposition. You cannot just operate in a vacuum. We are not supposed to do that. Just as people, we are social creatures. You need to socialize. You need positive behaviors. You need to work on behalf of the good of other people, and you need to use all of that emotional energy for things that are productive rather than compulsive. So, if you, I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, I have no idea what I'm doing next. I woke up this morning and was just like, oh, I think I have synthesized this in sleep, and now I am ready to talk about it. But I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.